G'day, Steve Morgan here from Australian Bass Tournaments and for the next 2 months at least, Fishing Monthly magazine. I'm sure you all heard the news that I'm going to stop publishing Fishing Monthly with December being the last issue. Reason being, can't make it profitable anymore for a variety of inflationary reasons. But thank you for all the cool comments on socials, etc. We look forward to making a couple of really cool magazines for November and December. Make sure you grab one. They'll be collector's items, of course. But right now we are at Yungaburra, which is on the banks of Tinaroo Dam in northern Queensland. We have 2 of the Xeric Barra series events coming up. And they are on Tinaroo. That's the water you can possibly see behind me here. Blowing a big southeaster today, but it's not cold and nasty like last year. So it's sort of a warm breeze. The lake's getting blown around. The Barra in this joint really love wind-blown banks, mud lines, warm water getting pushed into the back of bays. Water temps here of 25 to 27 degrees, which is really good for this joint. So we've been on the lake, we've been catching a few Barra. A few cutaway shots here of some of the Barra we've been catching, including this 120 centimetre one from last night. Nicole's been catching them in the back of the boat. We're slowly getting some patterns together for the tournaments that are coming up. In our cabin there, I've got Timmy, my brother, and my mate Joe. One of the boats in the cabin, we're the other boat in the cabin, Nicole and I, and we've got 11 fish in 2 days. So we're expecting the tournament not to be as difficult as last year. But we thought we'd take the opportunity today. We're at the caravan park at Tinnaburra here. Got a pool behind us there, got a waterproof GoPro. Guess what's going to happen? We're going to do a bit of underwater footage of summer, and we're going to do it, I'm going to break it down into one of my favourite techniques that's been doing really well for me this year, and that's jerkbaits. Most of the pics you'll see on socials that are Barra, both in Brisbane, Mondi, Awonga here, I catch on jerkbaits. Combination with the LiveScope. And today I'm not going to talk much about the LiveScope stuff. I'll do that maybe in the next, I'll do a separate video. A lot of people asking about what are the settings, how do you get it clear, blah, blah, blah. We can do that in a separate video. But right now I want to look at some of the different jerkbaits that I like fishing and what they actually look like underwater, how quick they attain their depth, how much they search, and how we rig them up to be perfect for Barra. First misconception, I think, is that Barra rods have to be super heavy. So the favourite 2 rods that we use in the boat are both these ones here. These are a 6'8" Venom Target 1 rod. So, sorry, I'm wrong. They're 6'5". 6'5", 10 to 30 pound, 10 to 40 gram cast rating on them. These are actually quite a light rod. That 6'5" means you can pitch cast with them, like an underhand cast very easily. Match them with the Shimano DC, the Digital SLX. Those reels there, they're about a $250 reel. Minimal backlashes in them, especially when you're casting quite light lures into the wind. And I run a couple of different sorts of leader on. Both of these are rigged up at the moment with a 60-pound Wilson fluorocarbon leader. But if I don't want the baits to run as deep as with the fluorocarbon, I can run them on a 55-pound Schneider leader, and the baits will go 3 to 4 foot shallower. So I'll start with this, and when I'm talking about this bait, we'll cut away to some of the underwater footage through it. This is probably, if people are going to say, just give me one bait to catch a Barra with on forward-facing sonar, it would be this. This is Samaki's DS80 jerkbait. People message me and say, oh, what upgrades do I need to do to the hooks to make them Barra friendly? Absolutely nothing. You pull them out of the box, you tie them on, and you go fishing with them. So this is a colour called Pink Lady. My last half a dozen Barra I've caught have been caught on that colour there, but also really popular is, for me, in my boat anyway, is this. This is the white bait colour. And for me, that's a pretty good imitation of a bony bream, especially that silver stripe down the middle. I think the bonies carry that silver line on them pretty nicely. But again, that's factory original hooks, and that one there has probably caught a dozen fish, that fella there. Run these with 30-pound braid as well, so, and I have the drag pretty much screwed up. Luckily, the reels themselves can't deliver so much drag that you can bend or screw any of the terminal tackle up. So I have the drag screwed up pretty tight on those things, but when I hook them, I let them run. If they're not around trees or anything, let them run, don't pull the hooks out of their mouth, and you will land nearly every Barra that you hook on this outfit. Talk about how to fish these jerkbaits, and if you're only going to take one message from this video, it's fish them slow. Even when you see me, and I'll cut it to a cutaway here, when you see me fishing the jerkbait, it might look like I'm ripping the jerkbait pretty hard, but a lot of that is on a slack line. So you'll see in the water that even when I'm sort of cracking the jerkbait on a slack line, it's only just, you know, moving a little bit. Now, what I've noticed with the Samakis is I'd expect a Samaki to not search a lot. I thought it would be a very straight and true action on a Samaki. It's not. It actually does search a little bit when you give it that, I call it, you know, the Parkinson's retrieve, the sort of shaky slack lined retrieve. It actually does get a little bit of side to side going, and that may trigger the fish to bite it. I'm not exactly down on the science of why they like biting this so much, but that may be it. Probably the first jerkbait that I used for live scope jerkbait fishing was this, the Duo. Out of the box, and this is a Realis jerkbait 100 DR, the deep diving model. Out of the box, they float. So I've retrofitted this one with some larger split rings. There's some 80-pound decoy split rings and some BKK Fangs hooks, and I found that combination actually gets these to suspend perfectly. If I was to describe this one's action underwater, this one doesn't really search. This is probably the most straight and true running of all of the jerkbaits, and you'll see in the cutaways here how it sort of retains a pretty straight line on the way through. Gets down probably not quite as deep as the Samaki, but definitely gets into the zone where it can get eaten. And I've got some of these things in my box that have probably been eaten by 20 or 30 fish. So that one there's the Duo. You can see it underwater here, how it's swimming, and definitely a jerkbait to have in the box. Third one, and this is a sort of a second generation bait, is when Daiwa first came out, they came out with their sort of Barra tuned double clutch. Now the first generation ones, had some, I thought the split rings were a little bit weak on them, and they've upgraded those now, and I thought it dived a little bit too shallow. So the guys have actually gone and made a deeper diver one now. So this is the double clutch in a deep runner, and this is exactly as they come out of the box. Hooks are right, suspends right, strength is right. They don't have a split ring on the front, so I just loop knot straight to that. This one here is on 55-pound Schneider, but you'll find this one gets that 6 to 8 to 10 foot deep that you'll need if the Barra are running a little bit deeper. Sometimes deeper is not always better. Sometimes if the fish are running just under the surface, you want to fish one of these jerkbaits with your rod up high to keep it shallower. Each night the fish will be in a different, but each day they'll be at a different depth. And that's why you have a variety of jerkbaits to take advantage of that. This one here is on a salty Barra Miller rods. My favourite Miller rods for this sort of fishing, and one I've caught a lot of fish on, is called the One Freak. And that rod is this one here, the One Freak. So a little bit tippier, I suppose, and a faster action than the Target One rod. So One Freak still does the job very fine. Let's look at the other one, and if the fish are a little bit shallower, the X-Rap. I'm sure a lot of people have been catching a lot of Barra on the X-Rap for many years. I'm only sort of fairly new to the X-Rap and only just sort of got onto it recently, but if it's a shallower bite and you want a shallower action, if you want something to roll over some weed beds, the X-Rap could be the one for you. Now they advertise it as a slash bait, which means you can crack it and rip it, and I'll have some cutaway footage here of what it looks like under the water when you're cracking and ripping it. But for me, a more finesse, just a stop-start whining retrieve or a really gentle sort of jerk-baiting retrieve is what gives this the best action there. This one is on one of the Wilson Fast Hatch clips at the moment. It's to keep it shallow. It's on the 55-pound Schneider, but you can do away with that clip, and you'll probably get this lure to run even shallower. And sometimes shallow is better. So let's just, I'll quickly jump up to the pool, show you a little bit about some of the retrieve styles, and I'm going to get these babies on the water. We've got 2 more days of pre-fish before the tournament start. So this is probably my typical jerkbait retrieve when I'm live scoping for Barra. I'll make that cast out. Again, I'm not going to talk much about the setup of the live scope at the moment, but when you're seeing a Barra on the live scope, you can see which way it's going and how fast that fish is going. So you want to lead cast these fish. You don't want to drop that lure right on the fish's head. 1, because it might be 6 to 8 foot down, and 2, because it might spook it landing on its head. So if there's a fish which is halfway out in the pool here, I might be throwing in front of it and a full length of the pool. When I'm getting the lure down to depth, I don't want to be really winding it fast, because if you wind it fast, all of these baits will sort of blow out to one side or the other, especially on the heavy leader. So it's actually quite a slow wind down to the fish. So you'll throw it out, and I'll actually just sort of really slowly sort of wind it down at a cadence, sort of get it to in front of the fish. When I get to the fish, you'll notice that I'll have this retrieve. It's just a little, all it does, and you'll see it on the underwater cutouts at the moment, all it does is get that lure on the spot, a little bit of action. But it doesn't move the lure a long way. There's a couple of ways that a barra are going to react to it. If it's a real hot barra, it'll turn, it'll go up to it, and you'll see it on the live scope bunch up before it eats it. That does not normally happen. Normally you have to really torque the fish into eating the jerkbait. So you will wind this lure down till it's at the right depth, and on Perspective Node you don't know it's the right depth, all you know is it's in the right place. And if the barra's reacting to it, you'll see the barra turn on it. And at that point, there are two things to do. One thing, you could do nothing and just suspend it in front of its face, and often the barra will look to it for up to 20 seconds and then finally eat it. On the night, you might find that when a barra's there, a little shake is all you need to get it to hit and react. And normally, on the hit, the barra will either hook up or it'll spook itself and it'll take off. If you're fishing a jerkbait in front of barra, they come up to it, you pause in front of them, and they spook with you not doing anything, don't worry, that's not unusual. Lots of barra will look at it, they're 1 metre long, it's 80 mil long. They will scare just looking at it. You will only catch, on a good night, 1 in 10, on a bad night, 1 in 150 fish that you get your lure in front of. So cast in front of the fish, wind it down slowly to the level where it's at, and if you use fluorocarbon, the slower you go, the deeper that lure will go down. If you fish you sort of give it that jerky little shake, retrieve, it won't go down real deep. So, in front of the fish, you might be, and we've had at Mondrian this year, they wanted this little retrieve the whole time. Other times you want to wind it down and let them discover the lure, and they will eat it without you moving that thing at all. It's definitely on the day, you'll have to work out what works best for you. When you hook up a fish, I don't go too hard on them. Take your time, get him in the net, get your lure back, and catch another one. The Reddicks themselves, I've got some will last one fish and they can break them and make them sink and break the bib or whatever. Others you might get 20 or 30 fish off. My theory is any lure that's caught a barra and it dies in the course of action, that's a good day for that lure. Chuck it on your wall at home and enjoy it. Anyway, that's Tackle Fridays. Going to take this rig out on that lake, catch some barra.